Hello guys and welcome to another video. My name's Mark, I'm an entrepreneur and property investor, and in today's video I'm addressing some of the comments I got on my last video where I predicted that house prices over the next 5 years will rise from between 20 and 30%. Now the general consensus in my comments was definitely that they will not, and that a house price correction or a crash is absolutely inevitable. So today what I want to try and do is go through some data, give you a bit of an insight, also go through some of these comments and just explain my thought process. And obviously I reply to every single comment that anybody puts on my videos, so you'll be able to see my replies and how I've justified my thoughts on house price rises over the next 5 years. But stay tuned because it's going to be quite an interesting video and hopefully some data will lead us to make some good financial decisions. Now, if you like this sort of video, give it a big like. It really does help me out with the algorithm. If you haven't already subscribed, consider subscribing. Nice and easy to do, and hit those notifications. And if you are a subscriber, remember, free 15-minute phone call, as many as you want, just book them in with me, link in the description. You don't have to pay anything. You can talk to me about whatever is on your mind and we can connect via Zoom. So let's get into the video and let me read out this first comment. If you believe what you're saying here, I'm worried for you. You say house prices double every 10 years. Well, I didn't, I said 10 to 15, but okay. Did property prices rise between 1989 and 1995? No, they dropped by nearly 20% nationally, and more in some places. Best of luck. Now here, we haven't picked a 10-year period first of all, we've only picked a 6-year period, and I replied the following. I replied, you are forgetting the 109% increase from 1985 to 1990. I said 10 to 15 years. And once you bake that in, house prices did double. Now, we then went on to have a bit of a back and forth in the comments, but it kind of concluded with me saying this. And he asked me, how can I see house prices rise over the next 5 to 10 years? You know, back then it was because there was 2 people earning money rather than just one. There was all these reasons why house prices were able to increase during that period. But if we look historically, they increased in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, and they've increased since 2010 and 2020. So whilst there may be external factors always at play, and you could argue that since the financial crisis, it's been inspired by low interest rates. You could argue that before that it was a dot-com boom and the fact that loads of money was being created with internet companies. You could argue all these external factors as much as you want, but the simple fact remains that in any period in history, well, depending on how long back you go, you know, if you go back to the 1800s, and I don't think that's useful, but if you go back long enough, you will be able to find periods where house prices stagnated. But we've gone through world wars, we've gone through coronavirus, we've gone through oil embargoes, we've gone through a multitude of economic impacts that are global as well as national, and still house prices have risen. So I gave the following reply. Why do I think that they will increase? It will be one or several of these factors. Probably cheaper borrowing, wage growth, investment, inflation. You can just list out all the things that would work in the favour of house prices growing. If you just halve the interest rates, for example, on my property portfolio, I would have an additional free cash flow of $7,500 per month. So I'd be able to buy more. And that's just interest rates, okay? So if the interest rates change, and they are at the moment, then I would have more free cash flow. If inflation continues to take hold and prices go up, well, the value of my properties will increase. I'll be able to remortgage money out and buy more. I will increase demand. If that also happens, some of my businesses will be able to charge more for their products and services. And whilst the percentage margin might be the same in terms of the profit that we have left at the end of the year, the number will be larger. So I then go on to say that demand, if any of those factors happen, demand will increase. Supply in the UK is very questionable whether that will remain stagnant, but if we look at recent history, we have never, not once, been able to keep up with demand on the supply side. So that's a good indicator. And whilst Labour have come in and said they're going to build more houses than any other government, they're already behind by a million miles. They also said they're not going to tax you more, they are. The reality is politicians say whatever they need to do to get into power, and once they do, it's normally about the status quo. I guess my point is every time that somebody says, and I think this is really important, this time it's different, they tend to be incredibly expensive words. We don't always know how, why, or where until it happens, but it always happens. It's like visiting a roulette table, where the ball always lands in black. Sometimes it bounces around in red. You know, sometimes property prices dip and things happen. It bounces around in the red. But it always ends up going black if we look at history. Now, I then go on to say, you can bet red if you want to, right? But remember, it always goes black. Now, pick and mix, I don't want you to think I'm picking on you in this video at all. I think you make some valid points, and I think you speak for a lot of people. Because I think a lot of people see lots of external factors and they get incredibly worried about the future, and they can't see where that next house price growth is going to come from. But the reality is, we never know. Like when the 2007 crisis happened and the financial crisis, we didn't know, and everybody was saying that house prices are going to halve, it's going to be absolutely catastrophic, but within a couple of years they'd bounced straight back, and low interest rates then formed the basis for house price growth over the next 10 years, and people became significantly wealthier. Now, I don't know what the next catalyst for growth is going to be, but what I will say right now is people are still buying houses, people are still transacting in the market, and people are still investing in the UK despite high interest rates. I'm still able to generate a return in the UK today, and I have recently bought a property in Sheffield where I paid 109,000, we've rented it out for £1,000 a month. Even with me fixing that at like 6%, there is still a 10% return on investment. So even with high interest rates today, we are able to make money in the UK. Now, there may be some regional variances, and there always is. You might say, one of these questions was, where could there be high price growth? And I could argue, certainly in the areas where houses are cheap at the moment. In Sheffield, you can buy a 3-bedroom house for under 150,000. You know, that's not a lot of money. If you're a first-time buyer and you're putting down 10%, you've only got to save up 15,000. Now, I know, again, for some people, that will be a big challenge. But for a lot of people, if they put their mind to it, that's completely achievable. We're talking about saving £1,000 a month. I own a taxi company. I have plenty of drivers who just drive Friday and Saturday night, just do 2 nights a week and earn an additional £1,500 a month, even once you've paid off the tax. If you just did that on top of your normal job, you'd be able to afford a house in 15 months. It's not unachievable. Now, if you reduce those interest rates and you make it even more affordable, well, I can see a huge house price growth in the future. So that's why I said in my last video, I see 20 to 30%. Savills are predicting 21.6% on a cumulative basis. Is the house price crash inevitable? Absolutely not, it never is. But at the same time, it always is. It's always going to happen at some point. 2007, prime example, nobody saw that coming. 1990s, nobody saw that coming. There's always a catalyst and a reason for a house price crash. But the really important thing to remember is we don't know when that's going to happen. And what I genuinely think is it's already happened in the UK. We've had inflation that has resulted in, if you like, in 20% being eroded off everybody's wealth. House prices have remained stagnant since 2021 till now, 2024, absolutely flatlined. That means to me that they've dropped by 20% in real terms. So for me, that's pent up, that's ready to go. As soon as those interest rates come down, as soon as affordability kicks in, rents are already rising, investors can already see it. You know, I can see it. Rents still make sense. With my example, we bought cheap, okay, we got a discount, but even if you're buying at 150,000, renting out for 1,000, you're gonna be making 7 to 8% ROI, something like that. It still can make sense. So there's already a business case for making those investments. Now, I don't know what that catalyst for change will be. We're looking at big pay rises in the public sector from Labour, and some people will argue that's bad, some people will argue that's good. You know, ultimately it means that there will be more money sloshing around in the economy. And let's not forget, if you give a pay rise to, let's just take doctors as an example, because they got a 22% pay rise. Well, of that 22%, let's say, for example, they're in the higher tax bracket. And even if we don't, well, we're going to take, let's use the lower tax bracket. Let's just make it really simple because I don't want the comments. So let's go 20% income tax, so 20% of that straight away comes back. 10% national insurance, another 10% comes back. 12% employer NI, another 12% comes back. Everything they buy and do, 20% VAT on. Fuel duty, the list is absolutely endless. I would imagine 60 to 70% of that money goes straight back to the government. So, and if you're a higher tax bracket payer, it's probably more like 70 to 80% of that money, but it will mean there will be more consumption. So I am a big believer in low taxes, low government control. I'm very much a right-wing person in that sense. I am a big capitalist. I am very much aligned to those values. But even if I consider what happens on the other side, I can understand how the money just comes back round and circles back out again. So guys, I don't think it's doom and gloom. I never do. Do I think a house price crash is inevitable? Absolutely. When will it be? Who knows? We just don't. The reality is, the worse things get, the more accommodative central banks become. And central banks play this very, very indicative role in making sure that economies function correctly. And the UK Central Bank has already made that first step, cutting interest rates from 5.25 to 5%, and they will continue to cut to support the economy as they need to do so. Inflation has come down. America is going to follow suit. America's unemployment rate is rising. Big tech jobs are going. Layoffs are rampant over in America, especially in those big tech companies with those big salaries. And again, the central bank over there is going to do something about that. So in my experience, the worse the economy gets, the better it is for investing in property, which sounds really counterproductive, but it means that borrowing becomes cheaper. It means that all the people in positions of power to make decisions normally overshoot the outcome. They reduce interest rates, they make sure it happens. I think it generally overshoots in both directions, but somehow we meander across this path. And the reality is, if you look at that path and you take a long enough, broad enough view, house prices always go up. So guys, that's my thoughts on whether I think that a house price crash is inevitable. Absolutely it is at some point in the future. When's it going to be? Who knows? Would I buy another property today? Absolutely. Do I think we're going to have a period of rises over the next 5 years? 100%. So guys, we're at that roulette table. The ball is spinning. We know it always goes black. You choose which one you want to bet on. I'm taking black. See you on the next video.